there was a big show, the Ed Sullivan Show, which we all watched all the time, and the Beatles came on. That was 1964, and we all got all excited, and my sister and me got on the phone and called 2 other sisters that we know and another girl down the road, and we formed the Pleasure Seekers, the first all-girl band that I was with. And it was as a direct result of seeing the Beatles on television.
Beatles made you want to be a musician?
Well, no, I was already a musician. I come from a very musical family, and I already played classical piano and percussion. But when we saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, me, one of my sisters, and 2 other sisters, and another girl, all from the same area, got on the phones, on the extensions, and were screaming, and hey, why don't we form an all-girl band? Bang. So that was instrumental in starting the all-girl band, 100%. Elvis Presley I saw when I was 6, and I decided I wanted to be him at 6. And then at 14, the Beatles on the same television show, and we formed an all-girl band from that day. So very instrumental to me as a person anyway. I even told Paul McCartney that story. He absolutely loved it. He was thrilled.
I saw an interview on YouTube, of all places, that apparently, I forgot the details, but Elvis invited you to his house or something when you were on tour or you were busy. Like, what happened there exactly? When was this?
It was 1974, and I have a tradition on all my albums since I started having my success that I would do 2 or 3 covers on every album. My first album I did All Shook Up, and Elvis apparently heard it. He was sitting at Rodney Bingenheimer's, which was a very famous 70s club, and Linda Thompson told me that he was listening to my track all night long and seeing my poster on the wall there. Not in a sexual way, just interested. And when I went to America to tour, he called me in Memphis and invited me to Graceland. His people got on the phone first, and then he got on, and I just was not ready. So I said no.
Not ready in what sense?
Not ready to meet him. I wrote a song called Singing with Angels. It's quite a known song now. It was written in tribute to Elvis with James Burton on guitar and the Jordanaires. So give me a break. I think if I'd met him, that song would not exist, and it's an important song. It's sort of his gathered legs. Everybody knows about it. People play it at funerals. It's one of these special songs. And if I'd met him, I wouldn't have had that spiritual feeling about him that I do.
What was the Summer of Love?
It was the era where everybody thought they could change the world. The young thought they could change the world. We stopped. We didn't want wars anymore. It was make love, not war. All that whole hippie thing.
How old were you during the Summer of Love?
I was 17. I can't say that I embraced that, even though I was a 17-year-old, and it should have been everything of that era should have been screaming at me to be part of it. But I think I was slightly removed from it because I was in a band and working. So I wasn't being a teenager and rebelling. I was a working girl from the age of 14. So it gave me a different viewpoint of it. It was just to me like a phase that the world was going through. Just a phase. I couldn't take it serious. And I ended up being correct because the Summer of Love turned into the Summer of Ripoff eventually, you know. So, but it produced a lot of good bands. I mean, jamming came into its own. You had all that West Coast scene. I mean, a lot of good stuff came out of it. The Monterey Pop Festival. Well, it was supposed to be the getting together of all the best acts of each year. They were all, you know, there was a lot of, I'm trying to think who made their name there. I think Janis Joplin. I think, oh my God, how many? So many of those 60s acts went there. And then, of course, you had Woodstock, you know. And there was some surprise. Santana was the surprise of Woodstock. That was it. Nobody expected that. London was like a mecca to people. I mean, you know, you had everything going from America to England for a long time. And then you had the British invasion, which all the acts were coming from here and going over to America. And so England got this really swinging Everything was happening here, you know. It was like the place to be. The haircut, they had the long hair that we didn't have in America. The guys wore their hair long. There was just a whole movement coming from here. I can't explain what it was. I was just a teenager. I only heard it through the music, but it definitely felt like a mecca, some place to go to. London. Maybe that's what started my love affair with this country. You know, way back when.
When did you move here?
1971 I moved here.
Wow, you've been here for a while.
A long time, yeah, but I'm still Detroit. I will always be the girl from Detroit City. Psychedelic rock, that was a direct descendant of acid and getting stoned. I mean, that's what that was. You know, everybody was high all the time, and that's what that was. And then, and that was people like Jimi Hendrix, oh God, who else was in there? Big Brother, Grateful Dead, all those kind of people. And they were, a lot of that came out of the Haight-Ashbury district. Your Jefferson Airplane, great album, Surrealistic Pillow, just great. And then that led, after everybody got done being stoned and started to get straight again, then they started to get into progressive rock, which is things, I presume, things like Chicago Transit Authority and Yes and Nice, and where it got very seriously musical again. Before it was jamming and stoned and how long can we do one riff. Okay, that's what the psychedelic era was about. Echoplexes and noise, and you know, that's what it was. And then it got serious again, progressive rock. The psychedelic stuff was, and you actually cut your teeth on it, I did definitely, was where you played your instrument for hours. It was like these solo sections would go on for longer than the song. So it was like really like, hey man, you know, you're out of it and you're playing and playing. It was, you had to be stoned to get into it. The psychedelic rock, you actually had to be stoned. That's what it played on. The progressive rock is, like I said, it's musical. Really, punk rock followed hot on the heels of glam rock, to tell you the truth. That's what it followed on. And that's where, I get classified in the glam rock era only because my hits were at that time. That came from the Ziggy Stardust stuff, you know, and the platform heels and the boys dressed up with makeup and this and that and this and that. So then punk went exactly anti-establishment. They went anti-establishment at that point. I think it was a direct result of what was happening at that point in music, not progressive rock. That was before that. Punk followed my first hits. That was the next thing, and they call me the early punk rocker. With the leather jumpsuit and the bass guitar, and that's what they call me, but I don't see myself as punk at all. I just see myself as based in rock. In the 70s, you had all your different, you had your glam rock, you had your progressive rock, you had your sweet girl singers, you had a lot of different kinds of music. There was definitely a different attitude in American punk and English punk. English punk was very much against society. You know, Johnny Rotten went on nationwide TV and said the F word, you know, and that just wasn't done on the BBC, you know. And, it was all the electric hair and the piercings and flicking razor blades at people. I think they were anti this country. It started here.
England.
Yeah, you know, the Sex Pistols and all that. So they became anti-establishment. They were angry. And instead of in the 60s where the young people got mad in the 60s and in the 67s and all that, and they turned it into love. Okay? Peace and love. And they got mad again all over in the 80s again, late 70s, 80s, and they turned it into hate. Because punk rock was all about hate. It's all about aggro. You know, with the piercings everywhere and spitting on people, and that's what that was. That's what the English was. English was anti-establishment, the punk movement. In America, it was a little bit more of a business.
In your mind, what's the timeline of classic rock?
I don't think classic rock is over. It's even hard to define. You know, and I think everybody's got a different viewpoint of what classic rock is. I don't know what I would even call it. I'm trying to think of who I would call classic rock. Give me a band who's classic rock in your opinion.
Suzi Quatro.
Okay. Then that means to me, if you use me as a basis of classic rock, means you're based in the origins of rock and roll, which is the Chuck Berrys, the Little Richards, the Jerry Lee Lewis. You're based in that, and you've turned it into something contemporary. So you have to start with that blueprint. Here we go again. That's the blueprint. If you have that in your repertoire, then you're classic rock, yes. It's guitar motivated, for sure. Guitar riff motivated. And it's got a very, very strong bass and drum line in it that plays together. That's your classics. It's not too many chords, you know. It's kept simple but heavy. Classic rock embodies the basic ingredients of rock and roll, which is your blueprint laid down by Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard. It exploits a sexuality, has no boundaries, so you can let it all out with rock and roll. It makes you think, it makes you feel, but at the same time, rock and roll, if it's good rock and roll, can just take you into another sphere that you don't even have to think at all. You can just fly with it. Good rock and roll will transport you. For a band like Nirvana to come along, you need a tortured soul like Kurt Cobain was. A tortured soul who just drew you into his pain. I never got into him when they were out, you know, and now my granddaughter plays them to me, and I keep saying to her, wow, I'm so into Nirvana, and I never was. My daughter played them, and I didn't like them. My granddaughter plays them, and I love them, so I came to them late. I don't know so much if all this inspiration is around anymore. I think that reality shows have killed off a lot of creativity. I do. It's sort of made being famous more important than making good music. And I'm going to leave that there. This is how I feel about it. You don't find true artists by having a talent competition. It doesn't work because you're attracting the wrong kind of talent. You're applauding mediocrity and mimicry. You know? I mean, can you see Kurt Cobain on a reality show? Are you kidding? He wouldn't get past the first audition. Yeah, labels used to be labels. They were families in a way, little families. And if you were with one, you usually stayed for your career, you know. I mean, I was very close with Mickey Most, who's passed on, now Rack Records. Nowadays, as I said before, everything is disposable. It's like having it's fast food.
So artist development isn't the way it used to be?
No. Artist development I don't think even exists anymore. Not really. Everybody's just after the quick buck, and like I said, the attitude of coming into it now is wrong. You know? I mean, years ago, you know, the Elektra Records, they went to the Whiskey A Go Go, they saw the Doors. They said, wow, let's make some music. That's how it's done. You know, you find somebody, turns you on, and you take a little raw artist and you say you've got something, and you put them in the studio and you start developing it. You know, you throw it this way, you try this key, you try that little arrangement, and all of a sudden you have an artiste. An artiste. That's what it's all about. And I'm still an artiste, and I will be to the day I die. My advice to anybody up and coming is you just have to go out. First of all, learn one instrument properly. I think you should learn one instrument properly, read and write it, whatever it may be. So you have a basic working knowledge. Hone your craft. Play every single gig you can get your hands on. It's total dedication. I'm 52 years in the business, and I have the same love, the same respect, and the same need to go out and entertain. That has never left me. And if you haven't got all these things, and self-belief is important, then you're in the wrong business. You know, it's not an easy job. I still have to go in there and play my bass every day. I don't just walk out on stage and take it for granted that I'm going to be great. I work at it. I'm dedicated to my job, and it is a job. It's a calling and a job, both.
People still believe in the power of rock and roll music.
Hey, thanks for watching. My name is Daniel Sarkissian. I'm an independent filmmaker from Toronto.